Mm-hmm. They gave me that.
Hello? Anyone here?
Hello?
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to make sure everyone can hear me. I got a message about my speaker. Just want to double check. Let's see, are we waiting for anyone else? I see Commissioner Sally, Commissioner Bloggy.
Yeah, and that is the full committee. So we are probably ready to get started.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
So good afternoon, everyone. I am Commissioner Ashley Esposito, and I am the new policy chair. So I'd just like to welcome everyone to our October 17th meeting for the policy committee. And if you have not done so yet, please mute your phones, and anyone who does not mute will get assistance from the folks moderating this call. Additionally, if you are not a board member or the CEO or staff, please turn off your video. And I will now read the roll call of the board on the policy committee to identify who's on the call. So if you can please identify yourself before speaking for the record. Commissioner Sally?
Present.
Commissioner Oblagi?
Present.
Awesome. And for members of the public who would like to provide public comment to this committee, you can do so by signing up at 9 a.m. on Thursday before the policy committee meeting at until 5 p.m. the Monday before the meeting. So our next sign up opens on November 16th and closes on November 20th. And individuals or groups recognized in providing comments to the committee may sign up one of three ways. You can contact the board office at 443-642-2095, or visit the board office at 200 North Avenue, room 406, or you can email the board at schoolboard@bcps.k12.md.us. And we have spots open for up to 5 individuals for public comment for the policy committee. And each speaker will be granted 3 minutes. And all public comments should address the policy issues that we'll be reviewing. And sign up is not permitted on the day of the committee meeting. And for more information regarding the policy committee, please visit the board section of the City Schools website at www.baltimorecityschools.org under the policy section. And in addition to the chat function during our virtual meeting, we will not be using that to gather feedback or comments, but you are able to provide questions or feedback by contacting schoolboard@bcps.k12.md.us, and the board staff will provide a response to you. So it looks like the first thing that we're going to be looking at is policy KDA, which is access to public records, and JRA, the maintenance and release of student records. And do we have board staff that are presenting?
Yes, well, you have administrative staff. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Andre Riley, the Executive Director of Communications. Good afternoon, members of the board and members of the community. I'm here with several of my colleagues, many of whom are listed here on this title slide. I'm not going to read every name. I'll let them introduce themselves. But we're going to talk to you about 2 policies that have a huge impact on the way that we share information with different parts of the community. Both policies, we have updates that we have to make to align them more with changes in Maryland law. And during our brief time together, we're going to highlight a few of those. So next slide, please. Again, our policy aligns with priority number 6, which you can read right here, with board priority number 6. Before we talk about changes to policies, KDA and the other policy, we want to give you an update about how well we comply with public records requests. As you can see, we've seen an increase in the requests that we received between FY22 and FY23. We've increased by more than 50 requests. We managed to respond to nearly all of them. We have 7 requests that are still in progress. And that can mean there are many reasons why sometimes we're not able to close out a request immediately. Sometimes it's gathering the data. Sometimes it's working with the requester on different legal matters. But for the most part, while we're seeing an increase, we've managed to close nearly all of them. And that's pretty good work for us. Next slide, please. Okay, of these requests that we received, most of them are finance requests. And finance usually means folks want to know about our solicitations. They want to know where we landed on those. They want information about salaries. They want information about how we spend our resources here in city schools. So overwhelmingly, most of our requests are finance requests. Labor and employment and accident reports, they're nearly neck and neck, but that's the second most requested category. Accident reports in particular, they feel like they've increased for us. We have a number of individuals in the community that when there's a traffic accident or vehicular accident, they want to see our reports for various reasons, and they submit open records requests and we provide them. Next slide, please. This chart gives you the different categories of requesters. Now, one item of note, you'll see the media category, and it says, of our total number of requesters, 19% of them are members of the media. But the truth is in the details. While the media only accounts for nearly 20% of our total request, of who's requesting the information, we have most of our requests some of them have media ties. there's a media outlet that covers us quite aggressively, and they account for an overwhelming number of requests. I would say probably disproportionate to that 19%. But in the end, most of our requesters tend to be companies or organizations. But I need to point out that media point, especially as we get to some other things we'll discuss in a little bit. Next slide, please.
So I think
Okay.
it's over to me. So hi everyone, it's Rebecca Burney. I'm Special Advisor, Chief Legal Officer. So the reason why we are making revisions to policy KDA and Administrative Regulation JRA-RA is in response to a new Maryland law, HB 636. This law went into effect on October 1st and is really prompting us to make sure that our policies are clear and that they're aligning with revisions to state law. So I just want to highlight, we weren't out of compliance with state law previously in terms of our practices, but a lot of these revisions are really just to ensure clarity and to make sure that the public as well as our own staff understand what data can be shared. Okay, so what did this act do? So this is really narrow in terms of it's addressing the inspection of email addresses and telephone numbers. So the legislation altered the definition of personal information for purposes of the Maryland Public Information Act to specifically include an individual's email address. I'm sorry, their personal email address. And so I also want to clarify for everyone on this call or in this meeting that in practice, city schools had not been disclosing personal email addresses of staff prior to this law going into effect, but we're really here just codifying and making it clear that that's not something that we'll provide. So as you may imagine, our Office of Human Capital has personal email addresses that people submit when they apply to city schools. We are not sharing those with the public. When we get these requests, we provide their city schools issued email. So I just wanted to highlight that as well. There are also a number of sections in this law covering specific student information related to, again, like the personal email address of students, as well as personal telephone numbers. And so we really just wanted to make sure that we were aligning what is in the law with our policies, with what we consider to be directory information, and also making sure everything is in alignment with FERPA and other federal laws as well. So our goals of these revisions were really to, as I mentioned, to provide clarity. So we were already in compliance, but things were a little bit unclear. So we wanted to provide additional clarity for staff as well as for the public. We also wanted to highlight whether information would be considered student directory information, what could be shared and with who. And then we wanted to make sure that our other revisions to policy KDA were aligned with our current practices in terms of how we are disclosing information under the Maryland Public Information Act. Lastly, we wanted to make sure that we were addressing fee waivers. This is something that's often come up, especially members of the press will often send us very robust record requests. And so we just wanted to make sure that we're consistent and clear on when we assess fees, how we assess fees, and the factors that we take into consideration. This is our revision to state law that went into effect on October 1st, 2023. As you will see in section C1, there's very clear guidance on when the custodian can release information about the home address, telephone number, or personal email of a student. And so there are very specific circumstances we wanted to highlight in our policies and in our regulations, that this information can only be shared with the groups listed. So that includes an organization of parents, teachers, or students, or former students. It includes representatives of a community college in the state. And we really just wanted to, again, highlight these requirements of the law and put them in our policies. And so with that, I will turn it over to my colleague Lyle, who will discuss the specific changes we made to JRA-RA.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lyle Monroe, Records Manager here at BCPS. So directory information is defined to include student names, addresses, telephone listings, and email addresses. City Schools has an opt-out form which parents can sign when they do their annual recertification if they wish to have the student's information excluded from release. The family guide that City School publishes also describes what city schools can release and reminds people of the opt-out form and the alignment with FERPA. And we would like to recommend revising JRARA Section 2G and Section 2L to clarify when directory information can be shared and who it can be shared with to be in alignment with the law. Next slide, please. So our proposed revisions to JRA will align regulation with updated guidance on the processing of subpoenas. It will clarify the categories of information that city schools designates as directory information. It will highlight when city schools may disclose or allow the inspection of the home address, telephone number, and personal email addresses of students. And it explains the nuances regarding directory information and that subcategories are not allowed or not, considered directory information. All this will align with the opt-out forms, and this information will not be released effective school year 24-25. All the changes are in alignment with FERPA and Maryland law.
Thank you,
Rebecca?
Lyle. I'll grab the mic back now. There have been similar changes to how we share information about our employees. The state law, as you can see on the screen, we no longer have to, we can deny inspection of public records that contain the home address, personal telephone number, or personal email of an employee of a school district, except in two cases. Number one, the employee gives, they waive that denial and they say, hey, I want to share my information. Or if there's information that's needed to protect the public interest. But for the most part, we can deny records, the inspection of records that contain those items. Next slide, please. Again, our proposed revisions to policy KDA and its regulation are, number one, we have to highlight our request for student information and make certain that they align with state law and board policies, LCA and JRA. We want to clarify once again that your home address, personal telephone number, and personal email address, those are employees anyway, will not be disclosed to the public except for the exceptions that I shared a minute ago. And we want to clarify that individuals have 15 working days to respond to our request for additional information after they submit an open records request. This one is important. Many times we'll receive an open records request and we'll follow up asking for more clarity. We'll say, you weren't specific enough or we didn't understand what you want from us. There was a time where we would just keep these requests open because we didn't want to shut them and then improperly withhold records from someone. So now we are stating in our policy, you have 15 working days to follow up to our request for more information, or we will close the case. Next slide, please. A few moments ago, Rebecca mentioned fee waivers. Those are instances where we have the right to charge requesters based on the work it takes for us to compile an open records request. There's a lot of guidance around that, but in many cases, folks will ask us for waivers. They'll say, I don't think I should pay, usually because things are in the public forum. Well, there's a notable case, the Baltimore Police Department versus Open Justice Baltimore. In that case, Open Justice Baltimore filed several MPIA requests with the Baltimore Police Department regarding its Special Investigation Response Team. And again, they said, please waive those costs. We don't think we should pay. BPD said, no, we're not going to grant that fee waiver. And they assessed more than $245,000 worth of fees. As a result, Open Justice Baltimore filed suit against BPD. And even though BPD does have the discretion to assess fees, the courts found that the denial of that waiver was arbitrary and capricious. So when we use fee waivers here in city schools, we have to keep in mind we have to create some sort of boundary around this. We can't just deny one fee waiver and go along with another fee waiver. We need to have rules or some kind of structure. Next slide. So we're proposing the following revisions to KDA's regulation regarding fee waivers. The first is we're going to clarify that requests for fee waivers are reviewed on a case-by-case basis based on relevant factors. And we will always inform you if we find a reason to deny those fee waivers. We've also clarified that the decision maker should be the CEO's designee, not the chief legal officer. And finally, we want to provide requesters with an opportunity to narrow the scope of their request to reduce any assessed fees. And for that third bullet, that's an action that we take normally anyway. Our job isn't to try to charge folks as much money as we can charge them, but we do need to make decisions based on the work it takes to respond to their request. So we often provide opportunities for folks to revise their request to maybe get that cost down. And some of those relevant factors include the ability of an applicant to pay. These fees can add up. We will probably never get to BPD's $245,000 assessment, but items can get pricey. So we want to weigh the ability of the applicant to pay the actual fee. We want to always consider whether the requested records will provide a benefit to the public. We are public school districts, we are servants of this community, and we should be transparent. And sometimes the records that we have are just beneficial for the for the community to know. So we want to consider that factor. We also want to consider the cost to city schools. That cost shows up in many ways. It can be the time that staff has to invest, electronic searches. There are many ways that we incur cost by working to adhere to the law. So we want to consider the cost to the school district when determining if we should waive a fee. And finally, the burden on employees to comply with the request. That goes back to the cost. If we have an employee that has to spend every day for the next 6 months working to fulfill a request, they may not be doing their day job. And that's an extreme example. That's not likely to happen. But at the same time, we want to weigh the burden because our employees have day jobs too. They have work that's required to support our students, and we want to balance that fact when considering if we should waive a fee. Next slide, please. Stakeholder engagement. With any change to any policy or regulation, we're required to go and speak to and share this information with the community. So we're going to post on the district's website to receive feedback about our proposed changes. We will share draft revisions with key stakeholders, including the organizations listed in the bullets here on the screen. We will either provide a presentation or we'll ask them if they want to provide written feedback. Next slide, please. Our current timeline is today we're here at the policy committee meeting, waiting to hear your feedback. In December, hopefully we'll present these changes for their first reader. And shortly after the new year on January 9th, hopefully we'll have a second reader and we'll have a policy that better aligns with Maryland law while enabling us to be most effective as a school district. And that, commissioners and members of the community, is our presentation. Are there any questions we can answer for you, or at least attempt to answer for you?
I will raise a question I have for you, Andre. So specifically, I saw that you noted in the presentation that it's the CEO's designee who makes that certain determination and call rather than the chief legal officer. Can you explain like how you guys arrived at that? And if the CLO is involved in any of that determination point?
Rebecca, is that something you can help me with?
Sure. Yeah. And Josh is also on the call as well. So I think that decision, so first I'll start by saying that all of our MPIA letters are actually signed by Chief High Hubbard. So they're actually coming from communications. They're not coming from the Office of Legal Counsel. And so I think it's important for the public to know that communications is their contact point when they have an MPIA request. And also that's where they should be expecting a response from. And so the decision maker, we just really wanted to make sure we were separating the Office of Legal Counsel, mostly because some of these, I won't say a lot, sometimes these situations are litigated. So I'll let Josh just jump on, but if you want to speak more to that point as well.
Rebecca did a great job. I just wanted to emphasize, I think that, first of all, everything we do in response to the MPIA and it is set out in the regulation is collaborative, so that we meet as a collaborative team once a week with Lyle's here on behalf of OAA. They're a key part of this, as is communications with Andre. And that we're very much in a problem-solving mode, but as lawyers, we're really advising. But these determinations of what's in the public interest is as much a sort of determination of the policy of this school system. So we just wanted to separate those two things, but absolutely involved. And particularly, Andre referenced this case, so we want to make sure that everything we do complies with the law when we do it.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that we can answer for you commissioners?
Any other questions? Commissioner Bloggy?
Yes, I had a few questions. So in reading on page 12 of the revised JRA-RA and seeing that change that was made to accommodate for families that had a different language preference and helping to respond to any of their requests on the basis of that which can be modified through online through Infinite Campus. I am very, glad to see that is being made because, I think that that's definitely a point of concern for many members of the public. But also just thinking about the degree to which sometimes that touch point in families communicating their language needs is sometimes missed. So I suppose just wanting to ask for us to think about if there are any alternative ways that we can provide for parents to communicate if they would prefer to receive a response to their request in another language. Is there any other way for us to do that other than what has been set out in the revisions already?
I think we're always willing to find ways to work with different families. We have different tools. But if we find that language is a barrier, we're more than willing to accommodate that. We have a robust translation and interpretation apparatus. So I think we can meet those needs. We don't see them too often when it comes to public records. When it comes to identifying your language, yes, we're able to do that. We're able to make those pivots. You're going to ask how. Again, through our family engagement office, we have folks who speak various languages. Here in communications, we have a dedicated Spanish communications specialist, and we have tools like our online interpretation tool and other means. So there are ways that we can make certain that all families have access to the information that they need. Was that helpful at all, Commissioner? I'm not certain I answered your question, but I want to make certain.
Yes, it does. Thank you. I just want to make sure that, in any instances, because I do also know that, some families that maybe English is not their first language, like some people aren't necessarily aware of like what's the best practice to make sure that is communicated. But it does seem that staff is adaptable on that when needed. So I think that that's not necessarily like a huge concern. So I'm very grateful to hear that. And then also, I also just wanted to learn a bit more, and I think that this also could provide some benefit to the public, just so far as ensuring that no one is in any way discouraged from seeking information if they need it. Just a little bit behind what the process is in terms of staff for assessing not only, I guess, financial need when it comes to the granting of a waiver of fees for an information request, and also the degree to which the release of those records to the public could be beneficial to the community, and just seeing that those were two of the metrics that we're considering.
As Chief Sivan mentioned, we work collaboratively to determine each of those factors. I think most folks will find that we work hard not to charge individuals. We think it's just best for us as a school district to be able to provide information whenever we can. And we often say the first 2 hours of our work, we don't charge you. That's just, if you ask us a question, I know that sounds funny, like we're a burger joint or something, but we look at it as a way to say, hey, we're going to work with you. We're going to provide you records. Now, if it takes more than 2 hours, if you're a for-profit business, that's one thing. But if you're someone who's, let's say I'm trying to find my yearbook, you know, these are decisions that I think we can make in the best interest of the school district. But the goal is, whenever possible, to keep the costs down or just try to put things in a public forum so you never even get to the MPIA request. For instance, our salary database, we publish it proactively so you don't have to ask us about salaries. You don't have to send a request. And one item that our legal team and comms and other departments, we've worked to make our website more of a resource so you don't have to. You don't have to come to us for frequently asked questions. We're definitely improving. We're hoping when the new website launches, we can go a step further. But I see Chief Sivan is here, so I'm going to let him.
I just wanted to take the opportunity. I feel like I'm flowing in and out, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to emphasize that at the beginning, Mr. Riley emphasized our compliance data. The compliance report is later, but we thought we would jump in and tie them to. Hopefully that gives us bonus points for having those two together. But on the compliance report in particular, that was an initiative this board added to the policy when it was last revised. And I think that we are at the forefront of districts in the state and maybe in the country of giving that type of data about our Public Information Act requests. So I think that's important just as contextualizing this work. It takes a lot of resources to do, but we also think that it's important to say to the public, this is the body of work that we're doing, and these are the trends that we're seeing.
Yes, so thank you both for that. I just really wanted to, I guess, have that conversation here in the meeting because, as we saw, the vast majority of our information requests are from the media or from companies, which probably can shoulder fees if needed. But, for members of the public, if there is anything, like staff are, eager to be accommodating if needed. So thank you both for that.
My understanding too of information, is that these sometimes, as Andre explained, is that they're come a couple of ways, right? So I think the goal from city schools is to make sure that the information is found that is in the public domain as readily as possible, so that there are not as many Information Act requests. And secondarily, when there's additional information that they may not have been able to resolve, this is when sometimes those requests may be funneled that direction. Is that right, Andre?
Yes, well put.
Yeah. So just to be really clear in terms of how those requests land at us. And so they're I do believe that city schools is operating in the best interest of making sure that information is as readily as accessible as possible out there. But this is where we start to see the fees attached when we're seeing more complex requests being made of the system that require the system to do extensive research or cut data or cut information in a way in which is beyond how the system typically provides that information to the public.
You're correct, Commissioner Sally. And one thing that we see a lot is individuals don't know exactly what they're looking for. So they will send us a very broad request, and the broader the request, the more likely you're going to incur some sort of response. So our job is to come back to you, say, here's what's in the public domain. This may be helpful. If you want to know about our different solicitations, you can find them here. Now, if you want us to dig a little further, there may be a cost, and we'll try to limit that cost, but we make it an option. But as long as we put things in the public domain, We have found it's just been an effective strategy, and I think Rebecca, if she wants to jump in, she could second that as well. Well, she's nodding her
Yep.
head. Go
No,
with that.
no, I'm agreeing with you. I mean, I think so. I'll just say kind of back to a question the commissioners alluded to, like how do members of the public submit these requests? So we get requests through a number of different avenues. Sometimes they're emailed to a staff member, sometimes they're funneled through the board, or if somebody comes to a board meeting and asks for additional information, we may funnel that through our MPIA process. But the best way for any members of the public listening is to go to our website. There's a Google form that you can fill out. The link is right on our website, and you type in, your contact information so we can get you the request efficiently and what you're requesting. And then that's funneled through our communications office. And that is by far like the best and most efficient way to submit requests. And it makes sure that, things aren't lost in the process. So I would just encourage everyone to go to the website. It's very clear about how you submit public records requests and follow that process, submit that Google form. And then you will, if you have any questions, you can directly contact the communications office and they can follow up on your request.
Oh, and I had one question. Is there any plan to take some of this information and put it on the social media platforms? Because I do feel like those areas like get a lot of traction and it really meets people where they are outside of these spaces. So for example, like the opt-out, like the fact that you can even do that, I feel like would be beneficial for like families to know, or, like a guide on how to do an MPIA request to lead them back to the website.
That's something we can definitely do, Commissioner. Typically, we haven't used our social media channels in that way, but that doesn't mean we can't. We've got a pretty robust audience across all of our different channels, and this is an easy post, kind of maybe a reminder a couple of times a month. I'll work with our social media specialist. I'll share the objective with her, and she's a rock star, and she'll make certain we start getting it done. So please follow us at Vault City Schools. Yeah, I had to give you the obligatory plug.
Awesome, thank you.
The one
Okay,
fun
so
question I have
let's
for you, the opt-out, is because that is at the school level. I always go back to the training, like a policy and regulation is only good as much like our folks who are charged with implementing it understand it. Can you give me a sense of what you guys are proposing to ensure that our folks inside of schools, those are our registrars, our other frontline personnel, understand how that process is implemented?
Sure. Oh, Josh, do you want this?
Well, I was just going to ask Andre that you start with our annual verification process that we developed this year, because I think that's an important initiative to provide a centralized way of managing all of this.
Exactly, Chief Simon, that's exactly where I was going to start. This year, we've initiated the annual student verification process. It's an opportunity for our families to verify their contact information. And we've expanded that to include ways to share critical documents like the aforementioned family guide, the student rights and responsibilities, the code of conduct, and our media opt-out form. And the goal is when you go to verify your contact information, you're able to directly fill out the media opt-out form. Now that form feeds back an Infinite Campus, and for the first time, we have a picture of who's completing the form outside, just hardcore paper forms. We're still polishing that work a little bit. This year was a pilot year in a lot of respects, but we're already starting to see good data about who's completing the annual student verification process, including the media opt-out form. And during our back-to-school communications, we really tried to make certain that the public understood not just the contact information portion, but these legal forms that we need you to complete. Here's how you would go complete them. It's been a little bumpy. Not going to tell you it's not, but we're further along this year than we were last year, and next year we hope to take an even larger leap. But I'll pass it back to Chief Sivan if he wants to close the show on that.
Maybe one suggestion I have is like when we come to first reader is maybe whether in the notes or somewhere in the presentation, just have a little bit of a nod to that, just so that people understand that like we are providing some guidance at the school level. That's a suggestion.
No, I'll take notes. I'm sorry. I had to go to my notes out. We could definitely do that. We'll have that in for first reader. And we'll also try to do some things in the interim. Just to make certain that folks understand this is how you work with us. And when we can do that, we can build great relationships.
Thank you.
Commissioners, it's been a pleasure. Y'all have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Okay, so I guess we can go to compliance reports. So I'll start with EBBB incident reporting. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Yes, I had a question. My question was, in just seeing that this makes the recommendation of updating new guidance just in terms of training for like emergency response for our school police. I was just wondering if there is any parallel guidance to like school support staff, like social workers and like counselors. I know fill that position at some schools as well. And if there is, I'm not sure if there is, but if there is, you know, would it be possible for us to also, I suppose, provide any updated guidance that might be necessary? Just seeing that some of these other disaster, or I guess emergency response plans have been updated a little bit for these other employees. So yes, sorry, that was very long-winded.
Oh, no, you're fine. Is there any, is there staff here that can answer to that one?
Yes, my name's Ashley Tournier. I am the Special Assistant to the Office of Human Capital. That's actually a really great question. So part of our recommendation is to make sure that we're not only providing guidance to the school police office, but all of our internal stakeholders to make sure that we're all aligned with one, how we collect information and providing the best possible resources for students and staff. Or did I miss anything?
Yes, so yeah, I appreciate that. I suppose then I would just love to know a little more about in terms of the training updates that are being given to school leaders for incident reporting. Does that have any bearing on the work of those other stakeholders within city schools, such as school police, as you mentioned, and counselors and whatnot?
So I would say no. If I'm understanding your question correctly, I'm gonna repeat it back to see if we're on the same page. You're asking if the training that we provide to school principals around our new incident reporting system has an impact on other offices within the district? Is that what you're asking, Ethan?
Right, yes, just because I suppose just trying to understand if you know, other than school leaders, changes that we're making to incident reporting, like does that impact the work of other people that may be on incident response within a school?
Oh, okay. So yeah, the athletics department is another external, but they're not external because they are in our department, but there are a non-school based department who also reports incidents related to our students, which may occur not during school hours or on a weekend, so to say. So the athletics department uses the same incident reporting tracking system to document things. Maybe it was an injury, you know, it might be an indoor basketball game and a fire drill was called. That would be something that our athletic director who's on site for that specific thing would put inside of the incident tracking system, for example. So we have had our first meeting with staff members prior to completing this report, just to give overviews for the people who may have not previously documented these things, just to give them a quick overview of the system, show them how it works, give them examples as one I just gave you as to what they should be documented inside the system. And then we're going to make sure that we follow up with those partners as we, continue on with this process, or if it evolves into something else.
And just to make sure, just to make sure that, just to put a nice little bow on what Cora just shared, as we are meeting with offices, just to make sure that we are thinking holistically as far as how we're approaching collecting the data and making sure that next steps are being taken, that may impact other offices outside of the Office of Human Capital and Chico Schools office. So if and when it's necessary, we will definitely partner with other offices to make sure that we are approaching everything holistically.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll go to EHB Data Records and Retention Program. Does anyone have any questions?
Just a commendation. Every time we have this conversation about records retention, I just want to value the work that city school staff is putting into this. I'm seeing with each set of compliance reports and each discussion we have that we're seeing just improvement as well as just refinement to the process in the system. So thank you. It's a commendation.
Thanks. And next we have Compliance Report GCO, Employee Evaluations. Does anyone have any questions?
There's a lot to unpack in this one, in particular, and I think that there's, I don't want to go into a whole lot of it today. I think this is like worthy of like a whole other discussion in terms of like what we're starting to see and learn. And as far as like kind of implications and future recommendations, it seems like my initial understanding and read of this is just one step in the process or one of many steps in the process that the Office of Human Capital is continuing to support effective evaluations in the system. So I don't know if is somebody from city school staff who wants to be able to like provide just a little bit of an overview of what we're learning, but there's a lot here.
Hi, good afternoon. I feel like anytime, thank you so much for your for the opportunity to be here. Please let me know specific questions that come up. It could be today or in follow-up. And I was just smiling because I have yet to have mastered the leadership skill of brevity. And I wonder if some of that then shows up in our writing and materials. But yes, I mean, I do think that one of the top line items that you've taken out and brought into this space is there is pretty constant work and effort around evaluations when we think about the scale of what we're trying to kind of impact the number of people that we are hoping to shape meaningful, authentic discussions about performance and impact, what kind of resources are out there, and trying to stay abreast of both research and as the larger kind of ecosystem is evolving in evaluations. But even as we think about priorities becoming more focused within the district and how we're trying to foster alignment, to me, I just see this as kind of constant work in order to be responsive. There are a couple of big initiatives, including some system shifts, electronic system shifts, and including some, I would say, real great opportunity to transform evaluation models for people in district leadership roles in ways that we haven't touched in decades. That I think is really great opportunity. So those are some of the things that, when I think about our next steps and what's in front of us, that I know is top of mind. But there's a lot that we can dive into with really most of our employee groups. So I wanted to acknowledge that. And then if there are specifics, certainly please let me know either today or as a follow-up.
Yeah, I think, and one thing that like I'll speak on as like in my other role here on City Schools is just chairing strategic planning as we're thinking a little bit about like the development of kind of the leadership goal as being either a goal or a guardrail. It's something that we're attuned to in terms of understanding like how these things all interplay together to really support our scholars in the system. And so I see all of that work in alignment. And so that's just a comment there.
Thank you. Yep.
and I appreciate the depth of your reporting here. Like there's, I think erring on the side of like too much information is great because it gives us everything we need to know. So I do appreciate everything you put into here.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. And thank you again for calling out that need for us to continue to look for alignment. I appreciate that and, and haven't lost sight of your comments. So thank you.
So I also had a question surrounding just reading in this report that we are moving like the evaluation paperwork and forms and digitizing those. And from what I've heard, it has been a long-standing request from BTU to have a set of sources for teachers in a video format for them to have clarity on like how the rubric is applied in the midst of an evaluation, just for them to have context on, what they should be preparing for and setting as best practice in the classroom. And so I guess just wondering if that is going to be made possible by our transition to making these electronic, and if there are any updates on that.
Yes, no, thank you so much for your question and bringing that up. I think so. Two things come to mind for me when I think about your question. One of them is when we think about access to something like a resource akin to a video library, which is what comes up based on some things I've heard that feels in line with what you've heard as well. I think that technology and platforms can allow people to access at home or in the classroom, easy access to these videos. So I feel like, yes, like when we have a technology system that anybody can log into, like that's a nice way to get things at folks' fingertips. I also think then about making sure the videos that are available are aligned and high quality and they message what we intend them to message. And that is separate from the tech system that is the platform, but is more about making sure we've got the resources and done the investigation and alignment to make sure that happens. So the tech system won't help us on that front, right? Like that's another type of investment. I want to acknowledge like that is also feedback that we have heard. What my team balances is we have an expanded video and investment where we did prioritize normed videos. So we call them true scored videos, where we can use them for assessing an observer. And so if we have like kind of the set of right answers that a norming committee comes to consensus on, we can then use them for training. We can use them to assess a qualified observer, how normed and aligned they are. And so as we built out a video library, our first place has been there because we want to make sure another piece of feedback we heard is the importance of aligned, calibrated observers so that teachers, when they have different folks coming in the room, aren't getting sometimes disparate or even contradictory feedback. I think there's more work for us to do and think about whether it's a video resource library or even helping teachers think about how they video themselves and reflect, like what are some of the ways a video library can become static, but there could be other ways we can meet the need that we're hearing from teachers. And I would just want to acknowledge that would be future work for us. I want to thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Sorry, I have a little lag on my video. So the next compliance report, oh, thank you for all that information too. Like, I guess if we have any other follow-up questions, we can send them to you.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Next is compliance report IJOA field trips. I'll open it up for any questions.
So mine is more of an observation than it is a question. So when I look through, and I really appreciate the amount of time it takes to collect this information from all of our schools across the system. It's much more of an equity question because we have some schools that, and for a variety of reasons, I don't think there's a monolithic reason or rhythm, because some may be related to the subject of programming, some may be available for resources or other things. Just ensuring that all of our scholars have an opportunity to engage in this extended learning. And it would be helpful in a future compliance report to understand the drivers of like why we see numbers on disparate ends of this. So why we see them on the higher ends, why we see some in the middle end, and ensuring that all of our schools have access to the resources to conduct field trips at the discretion of school leaders would be amazing to know a little bit more about that in a future compliance report. Just so that we understand from an equity standpoint.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's just a note to staff. Like, we don't need to get into that today.
And any other feedback, Commissioner Oblagi?
No, thank you.
Okay. Next we have compliance report JFBB, students and state supervised care. And I'll open that up.
Yeah, I had a question. I guess Commissioner Esposito, this is more so for you. But just given like your experience, I guess with the foster care system, I was wondering if you had any insight into, given that City Schools is now creating a position to help support services for those students and provide, direct support wherever that's needed. Like, if you had any insight into needs that might be unaddressed that could be taken on there. And I guess I feel that conversation could be valuable to have now since, we have staff here and all that.
Yeah. The first thing that kind of comes to mind is like a lot of things are centered around like student achievement. But the barriers to student achievement and I know we're talking about homeless students in the next compliance report too, looks very different when you're talking about like attendance rates for students in state supervised care. Like when you transition to a new foster home, that takes time and you may miss school for those things, or to go to court, or like coordinating with your social worker to have appointments that typically like happen during the day. And so I think the thing that would be helpful from that position is to get an idea of the experiences of students that fall into this group specifically, like outside of them being like included in the larger student population, to get an idea of like how much school, like what does attendance look like for students here. And also if there's a way to have like a very individualized approach to their needs. Because typically students that are in state care, it is a tough experience. You could be a kid that has, several placements within a year span, and the mental health toll that takes. I would just highly recommend that whoever's working with the students that fall into this group, make sure that they know what services they have available within the school system. Like explicitly say that, because it's not like a situation where, a student has parents that can advocate on their behalf. These are kids that have complicated situations, so they have to be their own advocate. So I think as much support as possible is going to be really important. Oh, is anyone here from that?
Yes, this is Dr. Pate, the Health and Specialized Student Services, which is where the position of staff specialist sits. And the approach that we've taken with our students who are in foster care or state supervised care is a direct case management approach. So Ms. Tia Gasky, she has a caseload of all the students who are in state supervised care, and she has a counterpart that will be working with her on the DSS side to make sure that she is connecting directly with those students as well as their social workers and foster care families to make sure that we are meeting their needs. One of the primary aspects of her role is determining what those needs are so that we can then determine how to meet them more efficiently. I think traditionally it has been assumed that their needs are the same as our homeless students, and we don't want to continue to be presumptive, but find out directly from them what it is that they need and how we can better support them as a school district.
Yeah, and is there any plan for like a report to go directly to like I know they'll be in communication, but to actually like compile something like as like a way to give feedback for more supports that are needed from the state side?
So we're working on our MOA with the state right now. to create a data sharing agreement where it'll analyze things along the lines of attendance as well as school performance, as well as them giving us information about who our students actually are, so that we ensure that we aren't missing students who just haven't self-reported to us.
Okay. Awesome. And are there any other questions, Commissioner Sally or Commissioner Bloggy?
No.
No, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that information. And so we have compliance report, JFE, homeless students identification, enrollment, services, and dispute resolution.
Yes, so I would love to have any insight, maybe if staff has that, just into, I suppose, the impact with this compliance report mentioning that we do directly offer to families that have that need up to $300 for purchasing schoolwear. You know, obviously, like a really strong initiative that I think, you know, it really supports a lot of families, but I suppose just wanting insight into, I suppose, the degree to which that has been helpful for families, just because I guess in my own estimation, I was just trying to think about, like, for students that are unhoused, like, how much would it cost for them to have like a full week worth of school uniforms, and just thinking about, you know, how we can support them there.
Yep. So again, with this group as well, we are taking that direct case management approach. And with that being done, we saw an increase this past school year of giving out uniform vouchers to approximately 66.5% of our families, which was an increase from 21.2%. What we have that team doing is needs assessments with families. And if there are indicators that they need more clothing, we don't cap it and say, oh, you got your $300 worth of uniforms. No, it's just saying that each family is eligible to up to that $300. So if they need more, we don't turn them away. In addition, this year we also purchased non-uniform clothing to create a kids closet within our office. So those families are also offered like sweatpants, underclothes, socks, as well as hoodies and different apparel that they can also utilize outside of schools. In addition, we recognize the need to wash the clothing because traditionally as a district, we just kept giving people clothing. So this year we also are incorporating things like laundry bags, laundry detergent, as well as laundry cards so that families can actually wash the laundry that we have provided for them.
Thank you for that clarification. I know that there's always some nuance that can't be expressed in the report, but I think it's really valuable for, I suppose, anyone watching just to know that, you know, that there isn't like a cap there. So yeah, I appreciate that a lot.
A question, Dr. Pate, I had for you is thinking a little bit about the requirements in the Elementary and Secondary Education Act that are required by federal law for both students experiencing homelessness and those who are in foster care. Have we reported on those requirements, so specifically the student achievement data and the graduation rate data through these compliance reports in the past? I know we do that through other avenues, but have we drawn those data points here?
This year we added the academic performance of homeless students as well as the suspensions and attendance data. And the reason why we did that is because we added that the driver for our staff. So now they have the obligation for all students on their caseload to quarterly record what their attendance data, their behavioral responses, as well as their academic data is, and to look for those instances where they aren't on par with where they should be, and to directly work with the schools to meet the needs of those students.
Okay, so we are seeing at the appropriate time interval that we are reporting in these reports, in the compliance reports, on the achievement, and I heard the other ones that you said, but just specifically achievement and graduation rates.
Not graduation rates, but we can include graduation rates.
Okay, and that would be helpful. And I think it paints a complete story for both of those two categories, recognizing, I think, the emphasis on the students who move in and out of those statuses, because we know fully that those students do not stay stagnant all the time. Some do, some don't. But I think it helps us to understand like where the level of support needs to be for students who are in those two categories. I would love to see just a complete set of federal requirements brought into the reports, as well as the data to kind of help us round out that conversation.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, thank you.
And I know it's not going to be every time you report, but it's probably at the right intervals. It'd be awesome.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So we have compliance report, KCB, and Commissioner Oblagi had to drop off the call. And this is the policy about volunteers.
Yeah, so I want to acknowledge, particularly with this compliance report with KCB, this is one that the policy committee has looked at in the past. And I think this information, Commissioner Coy, when he was on this particular committee, had leaned into pretty heavily. I think we're starting to get more information about the types of volunteers that are in our system and a little bit more about how these partnerships evolve. So I just want to acknowledge that we're seeing more of the information. I think it would also be helpful, useful for us to have a sense of whether or not our school leaders are understanding a little bit more about what this looks like for the system as a whole. And so as they're considering volunteers and partnerships, what more can we do to ensure that everybody is just kind of abreast of where we stand as a system?
Rebecca Henry, volunteer engagement specialist. So we have done, oh, sorry, what was that?
No, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry. We've done a lot of work to really spread awareness first and foremost, because I know my position is new. I've almost been here a year to the district. And so when I came in, my understanding is that this system rolled out in 2020 at the beginning of COVID. And so there was a lot going on that took away people's focus of this. And so we've been doing a lot to really spread awareness of the system. And so we've been working with school leaders. I have gone through every school leader and reached out to them to ensure that they are aware that PI exists, that they have noted all the staff that is appropriate to be in PI. And so really working with them to understand like the process as well. And so I've even had a couple of school leaders attend like the PI training and go over it. So we've been really working hard to make sure like awareness and access to PI has been happening for schools as like a starting point. And then now that we've got everybody in there, now we're really trying to transition it to be like a really solid tracking system for data and how we're engaging with partners and volunteers.
I think your work is paying off. I mean, I see it. I see it in this compliance report. Yeah, it looks much more robust than what we saw a year ago. And so I just want to acknowledge those efforts. And thank you for that. And I think something to talk to Chief Hike Hubbard about is whether or not it may make sense to do a small presentation at one of our board meetings, because I think these things are really important and vital to the success of our scholars. And so I think the more we're able as an informational item to update the public about this, the better, so that we understand the full range of investments in our kids is awesome. That'd be great.
Commissioner Sally, I'm here. If you'd like us to do a presentation, you can just ask Jonathan Williams to add it to the agenda. We're happy to do an informational report on our partnerships and volunteers work. We can schedule it out. I know the board calendar is pretty scheduled, so if you guys want to think about where it fits in, I know Rebecca and Kim would be more than happy to do a presentation.
I think they do a phenomenal job on that. Well, I will make that request. So I'm just doing an early preview today. So, that's coming. Maybe around the time that I know United Way does their big presentation. So maybe those things work in concert, but we'll figure out a time. So thank
And
you.
we do have a presentation on the family and community engagement policy coming up at the next board meeting. And we will be giving highlights on our partnership and volunteers work. So we could do a little more if you'd like. We already just turned a report into the board. So I don't know if you want us to add a little bit more to that or just do a separate informational discussion. I think that would be either way, but we did
Why
turn
don't
it in
we do a
already.
Okay, why don't we do a separate informational discussion, like just because I think that presentation is going to be robust. So I'd love to be able to lift this up just a little bit more, but maybe in that presentation, we could just have a nod to a future presentation coming on that, and informational discussion would be amazing.
Sounds good.
Awesome sauce. Thank you, Ms. Henry. It's very nice meeting you, and welcome to City Schools.
Okay, and our last compliance report is KDA access to public records.
I don't have very much for this one. I think we've talked a lot about this. I think it looks really, really good.
Yeah, I don't have any questions for this one.
Numbers are getting better and better and better. I know we talked about this at the top of the day, but like our fulfillment rates are looking really good.
Mhm. And then administrative regulation changes, IKA-RA grading and reporting. And this is an update.
Was this just an information item for today? Oh.
An information.
It is just for information.
Oh,
happy-
okay, so presentation. Okay.
I'm happy to
I don't
answer any
have any
questions or, okay.
No, I think this is fine. Thank you.
So it looks like we've got through the whole agenda. So our next meeting date is going to be November 21st from 4 to 5:30. It's a virtual meeting. The agenda items that we have for the next meeting are ADF, wellness, nutrition, and physical activity policy, and compliance reports, IHAMA, which is heroin and opioid addiction and education. And yeah, just a reminder to sign up for public comment. You can do so starting November 16th to the 20th, and it closes at 5 p.m. on the 20th, the Monday before the next policy meeting. And individuals and interested folks can sign up one of three ways. Contact the board office at 443-642-2095. Visit the board office at 200 East North Avenue, room 406, or emailing the board office at schoolboard@bcps.k12.md.us. Yes, and we have 5 spots open for policy committee comments, and every speaker will get 3 minutes. And yeah, so if you have any feedback about the policies that we're going to be reviewing next time, feel free to sign up for public comment. And
Commissioner Esposito, we're without public comment today?
yeah, we didn't have any signups today.
All right. I was sad. I was hoping somebody would have something to discuss.
Yeah, y'all. I mean, you all had great like questions and feedback. So, yeah. Okay. So I guess we motion to adjourn. There's only 2 of us here.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right, I'll see y'all soon.
Have a good afternoon. Bye.